Change is here. Those were the words of Premier-Designate Currie Dixon, speaking to a packed crowd in Whitehorse as news broke that the Yukon Party would be returning to power, ending 9 years of Liberal rule in the territory. Dixon will now lead a majority government, with 14 MLAs securing the Yukon Party's place as the new governing force. The Yukon NDP, under leader Kate White, will take on the role of official opposition, while the Liberals are left with just a single seat in the Legislative Assembly. So what does this political shakeup mean for the Yukon municipalities? What priorities and promises are local governments hoping to see from this new administration? To unpack that and so much more, we caught up with Whitehorse Mayor Kirk Cameron the morning after the election. All that and so much more coming up right now on Municipal Affairs. Mayor Cameron, thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking about last night's Yukon territorial general election, where the Yukon Party, under leader after 9 years of Liberal rule as the mayor of the city of Whitehorse. How did you see the results unfold, and what is your thoughts this morning on the election night results?
Yeah, so good to see you again, Chris, and thanks for the opportunity to rant on about things that some of us really enjoy spending our days thinking about, which is governance. Other people consider me a little bit sick, but you know, what the heck? Everybody's got their priorities, and this is one of mine. So it is actually quite fascinating, Chris. And if I could put it into a little bit of historical context, I hope your listeners realize that this whole nature of what I'll call seasoned governance, so like our Westminster system in the provinces and the federal system, has only been in the Yukon since 1979. Before that, we did not have responsible government. The authorities that normally vest in the crown and right of a province with a premier and cabinet ministers, that was not the case here in the Yukon. The commissioner of the Yukon, which today is now more like a lieutenant governor, really held a lot of those powers. So he or she sat in the Legislative Assembly and chaired it. They sat in cabinet and chaired those meetings. So the whole power dynamic has been localized dramatically since 1979. And so we're now talking about a generation of governing local bodies, local political parties here in the Yukon that only date back to then. So every time there's an election, something new happens and something fascinating happens, and it rewrites the history books, because never before have we had a born and raised Yukoner as the premier designate for the territory. So there's a new big deal. I'm not sure, I'd have to go back and look at the stats, but I don't know that we've ever had a majority of women in the Legislative Assembly. We have that now. So things change almost every election, and this is yet again one of those. My own personal view, Chris, is that I'm a really big fan of majority governments, and I know that's kind of swimming upstream against a lot of people who now think minority is the best thing since sliced bread. I'm not there yet. I still think a solid majority government that listens to the people is the better way to go. And frankly, we're a small territory. 80% of the population resides in Whitehorse. So at any day of the week, I can walk downtown and bump into the premier, a couple of ministers, my MLA, my senator. They're all within very easy reach. So if you think I'm not able to get my views across to my political leadership in this territory, you're totally mistaken. Oh, and by the way, they can get a hold of the mayor pretty much anytime they want as well when I'm walking down the street. I can tell you that for sure.
So let's talk about the city of Whitehorse right now, because as the results came in, I saw the then now former governing Liberals sort of swept from the city of Whitehorse, and a two-party divide go on within the city of Whitehorse. And it kind of went east-west side, where the now governing Yukon Party, sort of where the official opposition under Kate White of the NDP take the east side. Do you see that as the mayor to say, okay, we need to sort of bring this together and make this a unified city and not just an east-west NDP versus Yukon Party city anymore?
Totally, Chris. One of our big themes has been, and by the way, we wrote all three party leaders about this, is whoever wins the election, we got to talk. The city of Whitehorse, as I mentioned, 80% of the population, far more than 80% of the economy of the territory. We have to function hand in glove with whoever's running the territorial government. And so we now know who that is. Currie Dixon's government, majority government, will be the people we spend a lot of time talking to and working with to raise issues that are common across our city, because the kind of issues we face are not broken down east, west, north, south. These are about common themes around three main pillars, which last time you interviewed me, Chris, I prattled on about at some great length. And the three big ones are climate change. We're being hit all over our city by climate change. Population increase is hitting us square between the eyes, and aging infrastructure. And those big three are top of mind for everything we do. We just started into our public round of discussions with our community around our capital planning for 2026 and beyond. And boy, I'll tell you, there's a lot of work on that plate just to keep up with those basics that relate to those big three themes that I just mentioned. So that's got nothing to do with partisan breakdowns in the city of Whitehorse. That is ubiquitous across our entire city, and everybody is impacted by it. And boy, do I hear about that daily, about how each of those themes do hit me again square between the eyes.
So the premier designate in his victory speech last night explicitly about one of the issues that he wants to see solved in the next 4 years, and I say solved in the sort of grand text that nothing is ever going to be solved in 4 years in government because it takes a lot of time to do things. What he was talking about was this crime and safety. When you heard that, did you take any ear to that, or did you say, okay, he understands because your top three priorities, that wasn't one of the ones that he mentioned last night. So how do you see yourself working with the new laid out his priorities for the Yukon territory and the city of Whitehorse?
Yeah, and on that, Chris, it was kind of an underlying theme to much of what he said. It was implicit, it wasn't explicit, but he knows full well, and I've had an opportunity to bend his ear on this a number of occasions during the election campaign. Is this infrastructure challenge we're facing, and the need we have to make sure that territorial government is able to step up and help us out with those challenges, and also that they will work with us to advocate getting some deep pockets mobilized from Ottawa. And he's all for that. So maybe it didn't come out that explicitly, but I'm quite comfortable that I'm going to be able to work very closely with him and with his cabinet to make sure that we get front and center attention to those basic needs. Now, on the crime issue, absolutely, that is still very much top of mind here in the city of Whitehorse. City of Whitehorse plays a little bit of a peripheral role to the main heavy hitters, if you will, and that's primarily territorial government. So they have the policing contract with the RCMP. We meet with the RCMP quarterly, and we give them our thoughts on how they might be able to help do things a little bit differently in our city. But at the end of the day, they take their direction. That's too specific a term, but they get a mandate, if you will, from the contractor who is, or the contracting agent who is the territorial government, as to how they're to provide their policing services in the Yukon and specifically here in Whitehorse. Having said that, we also have a joint initiative with the territorial government and the federal government, by the way. A couple of agencies from Canada are also participating in this community safety plan, which is bigger than just our top of mind downtown issues, which have caught a lot of attention over the last number of years, and it's kind of the focal point of a lot of the conversation in the community. But there are community safety issues throughout the entire territory and the entire city. And to my way of thinking, bless their hearts, man, did Kwanlin Dun First Nation ever step it up with their community safety program. Their community safety officers who patrol the streets in a subdivision called McIntyre. They do a brilliant job. They work very closely with our bylaw services, and they work very closely with the RCMP. I believe the RCMP have actually stationed 2 officers in McIntyre. So again, they've got quite a presence there. All of these feed into a comprehensive approach to how we deal with the safety topic within our city. And I think we're moving in the right directions. We still have hot spots and we have problems. The big one for me, Chris, is this whole evolution of crime on the streets, these gangs that are starting to show up. And RCMP in our last briefing talked about there being something like 5 known gangs hanging out on city streets, and primarily tied to the drug trade. And that's ubiquitous across our entire country. This is not something that only Whitehorse faces, but it is certainly a big issue for us. And we're working very closely, as I say, with territorial, federal, the RCMP, with our bylaw services as well, to make sure that as best possible, we come up with solutions that make this a very livable city where people can feel safe in the streets.
Well, even last night during the Premier-Designate speech, he did mention the fact that he wants to work with the federal government, municipalities, and First Nations on all issues, not just do it as a Yukon territorial first approach. He wants to work with everyone. Does that give you hope that the partnership between the Yukon territorial government and the city of Whitehorse, and even the municipalities as large, are going to be strengthened under this government? Because you served with one of the incoming MLA elects, Ted Laking, who used to be the president of AYC, that municipalities are going to be at the table in these tough discussions, whether they be around crime, whether they be around gangs, whether they be around infrastructure or climate resiliency. Do you get a sense that the city of Whitehorse has a true ally in this incoming government?
I do. I think that is an accurate reflection of how this is all going to fit together. And let me just prattle on a little bit about that, because this is again the policy governance geek let off the leash again. But
you're on the right show for this there, Kirk.
But here's the thing, Chris, and I don't know if you and I talked about it the last time we met, but I look at this municipality as different than almost any other municipality in our country. And why is that? It's because we are no longer just a junior government to the municipal government, the territorial government down the street. Yes, we'll have our Minister of Community Affairs or some such, and technically when we pass a zoning bylaw, it's got to go to the minister to sign off and all those kind of good things that are required in the Municipal Act. But we've got 2 other things that we bring to the conversation, and those are self-government agreements with the Kwanlin Dun First Nation and Tonquachin Council, which means our fealty, our relationship, if you will, in community is not just as a junior government to the territorial government. We have these profoundly important relationships through self-government with these 2 self-governing First Nations. Read that carefully. Self-governing. They're not beholden to the territorial government or even the federal government. They've got their separate treaties and self-government agreements that give them and recognize true rights and responsibilities that they have also with the confines of the city of Whitehorse. City of Whitehorse can't walk away from them any more than we can walk away from our relationship with the territorial government. So we have, by the very nature of the framework that's now been set up through treaty and self-government, we have a profoundly different municipality than perhaps most in Canada. There are a few others, Yellowknife and Iqaluit and so on in the north, that have other kind of relationships that have a similar kind of feel to them. But we, hate to say it, we are different. We are quite different here. And that brings, by its very nature, this institutional framework I commented on, it brings that completely different way of looking at relationship here in the city of Whitehorse. Now, did that answer your question? I have no idea, but it's quite topical for me.
It does, because it talks about the relationship that all levels of government need to have, because the Yukon Territory is, and even I saw it up close and personal when I was out in Whitehorse, and I was up in earlier this month, and I saw the relationship between all three levels of government. And I've been to many different provinces and territories, and I could tell you the Yukon does it a little bit differently, but they do it in a way that everyone seems to understand that no matter what political party you're with or what political side of the spectrum you're on, you need to work together for the entire community, not just your own self-interest. We are now entering into the Yukon Party era of the Yukon territories. What is priority number one that you want to see this from a municipal standpoint? What is the one thing, as the mayor of the city of Whitehorse, that you're looking for from this government to say on day one, once they're sworn in, once the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Municipal or Local Governments is put into place, what do you want to see them get accomplished?
Back to that first theme, it's all about the infrastructure. We have a growing territory and a growing city. We have a real hit by climate change. We have to deal with aging infrastructure, bring it up to speed, because at the end of the day, our citizens, so long as they turn on the tap and they get fresh water and they can enjoy themselves and enjoy their lifestyle, they're happy. Well, I mean, none of us are happy. We're cranky, but that's all right, especially us old guys. But the bottom line is, it tends to be that, these things are happening quietly and behind the scenes, and nobody's taking a whole lot of notice until something goes wrong. And then you got to worry about it. New boil water orders or advisories in places in Canada now that you would never expect them to be. And this is happening in real time. I never, and I've said this before, maybe even on your show, I never want to be the mayor of Whitehorse who has to, put out a boil water advisory or order. Like, I don't want to do that. What does that mean? It means hundreds of millions of dollars of infrastructure investment coming from deep pockets in Ottawa and territorial government, because frankly, my city can't afford that. 37,000 people, we don't come close to being able to raise enough taxes to be able to fund that kind of infrastructure. So we need these partnerships. They're profoundly important to us.
Growth seems to be a lot of issues that I'm hearing a lot. Sorry, I'm going to rephrase this statement. Growth seems to be the topic of a lot of conversations that I have with big city mayors right now. And I say Whitehorse is a big city because it is the biggest city in the Yukon. The growth pressures that you are facing means that you have to start solving the issues, not tomorrow or not 6 months from now, but you need to start solving them 6 months ago, or even 2 years ago, when this problem started to rear its head. Now it's going to be a while until the next budget is tabled, and it's going to be a while until everything sort of settles into place. Is there anything that you heard during this election that gives you hope that the Yukon Party will take these issues around infrastructure, around growth, around climate resiliency, in 6 months' time, when the budget is, or 4 months' time, whenever the Yukon government gets to table their budget, is going to take this serious, and you're going to see some movement on the file, and not going to have this conversation in 1 year's time?
Absolutely. We did hear and we read a fair amount in that platform talking about helping the municipality with Robert Service Way, which has sloughed to a point where for 2 years running, we ended up having to close down one of the three major arteries into the downtown core. They say they're going to help us with that. We have significant contribution from the federal government toward that, but it's not enough for us to deal with that particular issue. We have a water treatment supply issue here in Whitehorse, where again we have to upgrade our water treatment facility. And again, in the platform and in some of the comments I've heard, they're happy to work with us to figure out a way to make Whitehorse safe from a drinking water standpoint. On the population growth theme, though, I note that our priority area, which is still growing, which is kind of the last tranche of residential development here in Whitehorse, that being Whistle Bend, it's created a considerable amount of pressure on our city. It's going to, at the end of the day, going to be 9,000 or 10,000 people living in a fairly condensed area with only one major traffic artery into the downtown, which people still rely on heavily. And the future, which is where are we going to put that next major residential area? It's looking like that's going to be maybe over in what's called the Long Lake area on the other side of the Yukon River, but it also could be south of town near an area called Copper Ridge. The engineers are out there trying to figure out the geotechnical stuff so that we get a good picture about which one's the better one to go with and how much it's going to cost us. But at the end of the day, there will be a choice being made for one of those. Let's say it's that one over on the other side of the Yukon River. What do we need? We need upgrading of the Mountain View Drive, bringing all those 9,000-10,000 people down into the core. So we need to upgrade that. We also need, if we're going to open up that other area on the other side of the Yukon River, we need a bridge. Last I checked, bridges cost a lot of money. So we're now looking at those kind of infrastructure drivers as well because of that population growth. And I'm happy to say that territorial government said they're going to work with the city of Whitehorse to figure out how these are going to be put in place. So we're hearing that from them, and devil's in the detail and in the conversation. We'll see how that goes between myself and the new premier in the next days to come. So we'll see how that goes.
It's ironic that we talk about financing because we're recording this, we're having this conversation the day after the election, but the day after the election is also the day of the federal budget. So we may be following up with you on what as well there, Mayor. Before I let you go, because I'm cautious of time, I do have two last questions I want to talk about, and that is, as the city of Whitehorse mayor, you have, and I say this respectfully to you, you have probably more access to the members of the legislative assembly, or even the premier, the leader of the official opposition, or even the leader of the third party than any other mayor that I would probably say in not only just the Yukon territory, but also in the Canadian Confederation, because you probably know them a lot more than. How do you see your role as mayor in ensuring that you advocate for municipalities in the territory, but also advocate for just the city of Whitehorse? Because you get to probably sit down with Currie Dixon probably a lot more than the mayor of Haines Junction, because she is out in Haines Junction and you're literally just down the street from where he is going to be working. How do you see your role in balancing both the roles of the municipality, but also advocating for the people who have elected you?
On your point, Chris, yes, I live literally 3 blocks away from the Legislative Assembly and the Premier's office, so it's pretty easy for me to walk down the road and bump into people in the foyer of the Legislative Assembly building and have good chats anytime I really want. I guess I want to recast or reframe your question in perhaps a slightly different way and just say, what are the responsibilities of the mayor of the city of Whitehorse? Because that's a slightly different framework to understand my role. And how I look at it is that I'm not different than the other mayors, but I certainly am in a far better position to advocate on behalf of all of the communities in Yukon Territory. So it is a very different kind of role that this particular mayor has, I believe, when it comes to being more than just Whitehorse. I was going to say bigger, but it's not about size, it's about geography. And so the Haines Junctions, the Dawson Cities, the old, especially the Old Crows, these are really more so vulnerable to things like fire, to ice and snow issues, to requirement for evacuations if indeed we did get a big fire in one of those communities, and that's happened in the last couple of years. So I see it as the city of Whitehorse's responsibility to be that haven in the middle of this great storm called Yukon, where when other communities need help, we're there for them. And I think in the past, certainly in the past number of years, and certainly all through the COVID period, I think we've demonstrated that we have the interest and the capacity to do just that. So I'm never at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities or the Association of Yukon Communities meetings with other municipal leaders here in the territory without in the back of my mind thinking to myself, okay, what's important for me to ensure, yeah, sure, Whitehorse has its interests and its challenges, but how do we work collectively to make sure that the whole territory is looked after? And to me, that is a fundamentally important role for me. Similar kind of argument to my earlier prattling on about self-government and how important that is. That's a kind of relationship where the mayor of the city of Whitehorse has to look at it differently than we've ever had to in the past because of the very nature of those relationships with self-governing First Nations and the non-self-governing First Nations in Yukon as well. Now, here's a little alert to your listeners. For the first time at lunch today, I'm sitting down with the chiefs of Tonquatchin Council and Kwanlin Dun First Nation to discuss what an agenda might look like. Because again, we're not leading it. It's all three of us are sitting down to say, hey, what might an agenda look like for a tri-council gathering where the three councils get together for the first time ever to say what's important to our city and what's important to our territory, because it's not just Whitehorse who's interested in helping the rest of the communities in the territory. Kwanlin Dun is made up of a whole lot of citizens from around the Yukon Territory who want to live in Whitehorse, and so they're living there even though they may be Vuntutquitchin or Trondequetchin or whatever, they're living in Whitehorse. And so that relationship out into the communities is equally, if not profoundly important to those First Nations, just as it is to City of Whitehorse. This tri-council could be a really interesting point of departure in that overall relationship. A couple of years ago, we decided we were going to fly the flags of Tonquatchin and Kwanlin Dun in our council chambers. We've done that. They're also represented on the flagpoles in front of City Hall, again as a symbol of the importance of that relationship. Now I think taking it one step further with this tri-council can actually bring a number of the topics that are critical to all three on, put them on the table and have good discussions about how collectively can we make things happen for our city in the best interests of all of us. So it's a bit of a Cinderella story. I love it. I'm really active wanting to work with the two chiefs on this. But I'm going in this with a blank sheet. I have ideas about what might be on that agenda. It's not my agenda. It's all of ours. So I don't know if that again answered your question.
It does, but it brings up about three different other questions. So hopefully you have an extra 5 minutes for me because I want to ask some follow-up questions on that.
Okay.
we heard a lot of talk about a Yukon forum during this election, during this territorial election, and we heard a lot of talk this incoming administration wants to build between municipalities and First Nations. Now, the work doesn't start today because the issues the new incoming premier has outlined in his victory speech. They've already been ongoing. How easy is it going to incorporate the vision that the new premier and the new government has in the conversations that have already been going on between yourself with the First Nations, but also between the territorial government under the then, well, now former Liberal Party into this? Imagine the transition needs to be seamless because people can't go back to the starting board and go back to day one. So, how important is it for yourself? Because you've been there for, I think your term was a year and a half old now. So, you've been there for some time and the work needs to
1 year.
continue on. What role do you see yourself? 1 year. So, 1 year. So, congratulations on 1 year being mayor of Whitehorse. So, what do you see as your role in ensuring that smooth transition so the work doesn't go right back to square one? Because that's the worst thing that I've ever heard about when it comes in. Everything kind of gets slowed down for a bit, but it can't, can it?
Well, I don't think there's an option. I think it has to slow down for a short while because they got to get their feet under them. Like
Okay.
this whole group, there are a couple of old timers in there who have some seasoned experience in government and in cabinet, but most of them haven't. New premier, he's got to get his feet under him. He's got to assemble what I refer to as his front office, which is, the chief of staff and the key political support people in his front office. Build that relationship with a significant public service. I used to be the cabinet secretary here in the Yukon, so I know about that interface between the departments and the front office, and it's a critical one, and it takes some time, and it's all about relationship building. So all of this is about relationships, and I just put it on the table that the tri-council idea, what's happening with the Yukon Forum. There's one, I don't know what the title of it is, but there's one where the federal minister of Sirnak comes to town and they all get together as well, and I forget the title of that one. So there's that relationship that they have to build. And there's another one which it's been around for a little while now, and that's the mayors and chiefs forum, and that's another fabulous one where we, frankly, the last one we spent a lot of time talking about community safety, not just for Whitehorse, but for the entire territory. And these are the kind of big deals that are part of these kind of relationship building forums that enable us to get our heads around the fact we're not in it alone. We do not have jurisdiction to do just whatever we want to do. We're working and playing in a sandbox that's a heck of a lot bigger than just who we are. Even City of Whitehorse, which is, as I say, pretty doggone big, but we're just one of many. And all of these fora affect how we operate and how we look at our world and how we treat those people who put us in office. And those are profoundly important questions that daily I think about. I spend time working through those relationships. Obviously, very early on, I'm going to be hoping to sit down with Currie to have that first discussion about how I can help him out in his role, in his transition to make things work where it comes to effective leadership here at City of Whitehorse and with his new territorial government. So you're absolutely poking at all the big issues that really affect all of us territory-wide. And it's a spider web. It's a weave of all these multiple interests wearing separate hats. And I haven't even talked about the NGO sector, which brings a whole new set or different set of hats that we also need to spend time talking to and working with over the year.
Well, if I've learned anything about you and I could probably spend about 3 hours just chatting about one topic because we seem to be both in that nerd sense about municipal government and good governance. But I want to pick up on my last thing because you just mentioned that you want to hopefully have a sit down with the new incoming premier and sort of work together. Are you hoping to have that same relationship with Kate White, the leader of the Yukon NDP, the now leader of the official opposition? Because your role is to who voted for the NDP, who there are people who there voted for the Liberals, and there are people who there voted for the Independents, but unfortunately none of them got elected last night. So how important do you see your role in not only ensuring that Premier-Designate Dixon understands what's going on in Whitehorse, but leader of the official opposition, Kate White, understands as well because she's going to be in that legislative assembly holding the feet to the flames for the government, and you're going to be there talking to both sides, I'm assuming, right?
Absolutely, and Chris, bless her heart, we never have a problem hearing from Kate White. She often comes to City Council on behalf of citizens, residents of Whitehorse, on issues that are important that she is convinced City of Whitehorse needs to hear. So there's an organic, I don't know, understanding about let's get together and talk. It happens all the time. I bump into Kate a lot. My MLA is Lane Treasure here in downtown, and so there's a connection that I use the term more organic than formal. So do I pick up the phone and call Kate and say, hey, let's get together for lunch? Nah, not usually. But do we connect and talk about things important to our city? Absolutely, and that's equally as important to me. And that goes back to your earlier question about this city now divided between who's blue and who's orange. Doesn't matter to me. I know all of these MLAs, and I'll be talking to all of them off and on in the next month or two or five, because it's just so important to how this city functions.
So I know I'm gonna put the cart before the horse for my very last question, but I have to get this in to get this question on the record just to see what you where your mind's at right now. Now, the first priority for this government, the for Mr. Premier Designate Dixon, will be to appoint a new cabinet. Do you have your odds-on favorites of who you're hoping to see in the role of government relations or local governments or municipal affairs, whatever they're going to name it this term around? Are you, or community services, are you looking at one particular person over another, or are you willing to work with whoever the premier designate puts into that position?
Well, you know me, Chris, I'm a cranky old guy, and so I don't like working with anybody. But if I have to work with somebody there, Uh, let me throw out there a new idea. So it goes back to my initial thoughts on the evolution of party politics and responsible government here in the territory. Things change, and in the past, there have been individuals in the premier's role who have said, "We'll take on economic development." It's often that the premier is the minister of finance, but not always. That changed last time around when Ranj Pillai was elected by the party to be the premier, the leader, and thus appointed as premier. And he decided to leave that with his predecessor. So so there's no static sense of what the picture ends up looking like. And I'd like to suggest that because of that importance of municipal business here in the territory, that he hold the municipal services portfolio, and I have to work with him. I'd be delighted with that. But look at the bench strength that he has to work with. You know, the Brad Cathers of the world and so on. These are people with a lot of experience going way back in this territorial recent representative responsible government. And so any one of them, they understand this stuff. You know, when I'm at the Association of Yukon Communities conferences in Dawson and Watson Lake and Haines Junction, I'm often bumping into the MLAs or the cabinet ministers who come to be there because they know how important this stuff is. And so, you know, they're everywhere. And could I work with any of them? Absolutely. But it's a rich group to be able to say, hey, wow, maybe Ted Laking is going to be our municipal services. I wonder why. Well, he was on the national board for Federation of Canadian Municipalities. He was on Whitehorse City Council. He kind of knows the business. So would I like that? Sure. Come on. I'd love any and all of it. And maybe,
but at the end of the day, you're still an old white cranky guy, right?
exactly. But maybe we create something different where it's like 2, 3, or 4 of them decide that they're going to go have lunch with the mayor of Whitehorse just because. I don't know. Maybe I'll suggest that to them.
Well, it will be a very fun 4 years, and I look forward to our continued conversation as this unfolds. And I look forward to seeing you up in Watson Lake in May of the next AYC convention is. So I'm looking forward to reconnecting in person, and then FCM later on in Edmonton. So it's going to be a fun year, and I'm looking forward to our continued conversations. And this is probably not the last time we chat by the end of this year, 2025 there, Mayor Cameron. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for taking time out of your day on election day, but also on budget day to talk about what the path forward is for the Yukon municipalities, but also for the city of Whitehorse. So thank you so much.
Yeah, if you want to refresh on that budget, talk tomorrow because who knows what's going to come out of that one.
Thank you so much for tuning in for another edition of Municipal Affairs. Now, we hope you've enjoyed today's conversation and gained some valuable insights into the world of municipal politics and the relationship with the territorial government in the Yukon territories. Now, your support means the world to us, so share this episode with your friends, your family, and yes, even your community, and help keep the conversation going. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform, or if you're watching us on YouTube right now, hit that subscribe button so you never miss an upcoming episode. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and we will be back with a brand new episode of Municipal Affairs shortly. Till then, everyone.